If you think about a cheese that is producing the French Alps with like the cows only grazing a certain type of herbs that kind of ends up in the milk and that gives the cheese a very specific flavor, that is hard to replicate, and I also don't think that that will be made redundant anytime soon, but we're more talking about the animal mass factory farming produced standardized product that lands everywhere on the shelves, right? So there is definitely a difference.
Through our platform, we are already today able to produce the whole variety of cheese. Anything from a spread to a brie to a blue cheese to an aged cheese, a Greek feta cheese, you name it. Anything you want, we can already produce it today at large scale. Today we're only having that in the German market, but soon we're going to expand all across Europe and soon the world. Our mission is to replace 10% of Europe's dairy by 2030, which is roughly equivalent to what Nestle currently does in its dairy industry. And through that, saving all that emission, using less water, land, and obviously getting rid of the cows in our food system. I would love you to join us on this mission to unfuck the food system and make food great again.
I hope everyone is having a great end to their week. In today's video, we want to talk about Formo. They're a precision fermentation cheese maker based in Germany. I'm super excited about them. I think they're doing a lot of great things. I've not tried their product yet. Hopefully I'll be able to sometime in the next year or two. But in this video, I want to go through, I've taken a number of clips from their CEO. A, just to try and show where the company is, and B, to get a better understanding of where the CEO is coming from, how he thinks about the space. Really great interviews, so links, of course, to the full ones are in the description. Let's get into the video.
Already today, we are working with a variety of chefs here, featuring Ricky Saward from Frankfurt. He was actually the world's first fully plant-based Michelin star chef, sourcing all of his ingredients from only a radius of 20 kilometers around his restaurant. He has not been using any animal ingredients in his kitchen, but working with us, he basically can now go back to the foods that have been part of our cultures for millennia and produce completely new structures, flavors, and amazing consumers in his restaurant and all around the globe. It's super cool to see because we have set out to change this industry, and getting the feedback also from high-end cuisine that the products we produce really perform the exactly same way. It's just amazing to see.
So if I'm reading the tea leaves right, what it sounds like is that their products are ready and now they just have to go through the regulatory process before they can actually sell them in Europe. So fucking cool. In the meantime, they're going to be launching some other products that don't necessarily need to go through a long regulatory process. Let's look at those first, and then we'll get into the longer interview. Again with Green Queen, man, they just seem to have all the information. It's like you should follow them or something. September 26th, so a few weeks ago. Formo CEO Raffael, Wohlgensinger, and researcher Oscar Zollman Thomas speak to Green Queen exclusively about launching the first such egg alternative in Europe. Formo will be debuting an alternative to eggs made via precision fermentation alongside its first cheese alternative, dubbed Friedrichshain in its home city of Berlin. Friedrichshain is actually a cream cheese. The company says the products will be available at various hotels, restaurants, and cafes before they eventually move into retail next year. Formo's protein is made using a microbe called Aspergillus oryzae, more commonly called koji mold. But the company's ingredient isn't an identical replica of egg proteins like orvalbumin or orvotransferrin. Instead, it's a protein that offers the same functional properties. This is all down to the structure of the protein, meaning our products taste and behave identically to eggs. In the EU, many products made with precision fermentation fall under the Novel Food Regulatory Framework, requiring regulatory approval for commercial sale. The application process is a lengthy one and can take several years. This is also why the cultivated butter that we saw in an earlier video by Woolcroft, they're using the term precise fermentation instead of precision fermentation, and it's largely because of the same regulations and because they're making their products in the same way. Wohlgensinger confirms that Formo's protein that they're using for their eggs and this cheese is not classified as a novel food under these rules, and so does not need to pass through any regulatory process. We're producing the primary ingredient, our protein, through precision fermentation, but without the usage of synthetic biology tools that would be considered genetic engineering in the EU. Koji mold is known as Japan's national fungus and is used in many traditional fermented foods like miso, mirin, shoyu, and alcoholic beverages like shochu and soju. We've been in contact with a number of national food safety authorities who have confirmed this assessment. Formo has an unwavering commitment to food and product safety, and we diligently adhere to all applicable food safety rules and regulations, whether at the EU or the national level. Our decision to forge into the egg market reflects both our conviction in the protein production platform and our end product's ability to go toe-to-toe with conventional products. The new precision fermentation egg will initially carry a price premium compared to its chicken-derived counterpart, especially when you consider existing industrial and government subsidies to the existing system with conventional production. But just like solar, we're rapidly decreasing our costs associated with our products. This guy seems to know a few things. I like him as a CEO.
Why do you think that biology has the potential to maybe solve critical challenges such as climate change or the increasing threat to sovereignty of nations?
Yeah, I think really because it's nature's technology of doing things in the most efficient way. And I think with everything coming up in SynBio and also the underlying picks and shovels technology of biomanufacturing, for the first time we can kind of harness the technology in a very targeted way. So we can use basically nature's efficiency to then solve these problems in the most efficient way. If you think about, for example, if you compare the efficiency of animals to produce food versus microorganisms through SynBio, you get an efficiency increase of 10x plus, which is obviously really cool. And when we think about resource scarcity and planetary boundaries and sustainability in general, it's the way to go for sure.
So let's go back to the start. Can you walk us through the journey of you starting the company and what challenges did you have to overcome as a non-scientist in a scientific field?
Yeah, I think it's always a bit strange to like now look back after some years and think about kind of, you know, how everything really came together. I think it's sometimes we like to think about our lives and how things come together in kind of like a coherent story that, oh, you know, it was kind of unavoidable that certain things happen. But I really think it's, in this case, or in my case, it was a lot of the right people like you and others around me who really also helped me and supported me and pushed me. But I think the first few things really is a certain obsession with a topic. And for me, that obsession was with food, producing food without animals. And then obviously going to biology as the technology to do that. The challenge is early on is, of course, I graduated from a business school, and how do you build a science company without a science degree is kind of everybody's asking, yeah, or looking at me doesn't seem too credible. So I spend a lot of time really getting deep into the science. So I took like 6 months really just doing only online courses, Biology 101, synthetic biology, industrial biotechnology. I started to go and visit a couple of professors at TU Berlin, at ETH, at TU Denmark, etc., and basically just getting deep into the science of like what's the current status of the science, and also figuring out, you know, what are the skills and capabilities and ultimately people I would need to bring on to this journey to then make this happen. I think that's number one, really, you know, getting the credibility, being deep into the topic, and then having the ability to tell the story to people and excite them to join you on this journey, I think is the first challenge that I had in this whole endeavor.
So, skills and capabilities. What would a non-scientific founder today need as the key skill and potentially other capabilities to start a company?
I think one thing that I just mentioned before, it is a certain obsession with the technology that you want to use in order to build. Because, of course, like you don't need a science degree, but you need to be very literate in that, you know, technology field or in that scientific field. Meaning that you need to be able to, when you hire people or when you speak with people, you need to be able to at least conceptually go very deep into what you're looking for or what you're trying to build. You don't, in my case, for example, I don't need to stand at the lab bench and pipette certain things, but I need to know like how does the process works and what we're looking for. So one thing that non-scientific people need in order to found deep tech science topics, I think, is the obsession with that technology. The second thing, and I already mentioned that before, and I think is really the skill necessary in order to build deep tech companies is really storytelling. Because if you're if you don't have a science background, you're dependent on great scientists and tech people joining you on your mission. And in order to do that, you need to be able to tell a story, obviously like a visionary story, but also you need to be able to make an appeal or to be relatable for the science community, which maybe as business students or for me, doesn't come that naturally. So you need to be able to tell a story. Have the obsession, and then the third thing, which I always think is one of the key traits that you need to start any company, is really just the courage to do it.
So let's dig into storytelling. Do you think you're a technological wizard or rather a prophet telling stories?
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to the question of are we changing the world through great technology, or do we believe in people need to change their behavior in order to change the world, basically? Do we need a social consciousness change, or do we need great technology? And I think it's not one or the other. What we see in many instances in the world, technology basically starts with a very basic need. So for example, if you look at the letterpress that was invented by Gutenberg, you know, like the idea was, I want to have more of these books that I can distribute, and then it completely changed the way that we relate to reality, the way we deal with each other, the way we conceptualize life in general. And so that invention basically changed the way that humans think about reality or about their lives. And so I think technology is a part of the human nature, but it also has a feedback loop. I mean, the technology that we invent also affects the way that we think. I mean, look at the iPhone, for example, right? And so I wouldn't say it's either or, but I think it's both. So we need great technology in order to solve problems, but also I think we need a change in social consciousness or behavior, but that is a feedback loop that goes back and forth.
What stories do you tell your team? You now have well over 50 people. 2/3 of this is in the R&D team. So what stories do you tell them to gather around all of your team to go to that one goal that you set out?
Yeah, so we're 80 people with 2/3 scientists or technicians in that case. And I think what really, the beauty that we have and kind of the privileged position that we're in also when it comes to hiring, attracting great people, is the story that we are telling that everybody really gathers around and is rallied from and it gets excited about is our purpose, which is a better planet through sustainable food. So everything that we do, no matter what, is targeted towards that goal. And we have the vision of replacing 10% of Europe's dairy by 2030, which is roughly the size of Nestle today. So it's a very, very big vision that we want to solve through technology. So I think a lot of scientists that work for us and who have come from academia, they say, okay, I was in academia, but things never translated and had an impact in real life. And the people who came out of industry say, I was working in something that translates a lot into reality, but not really with a cause that I can stand behind. So we're kind of marrying both of those and say, okay, you can have an impact, but also an impact you believe in, and you can create a reality that we all want to live in through the science that you love to do anyways. Because the people who are scientists, they love, they love the science, they love the innovation, they love to work on new things, on creative things. And that, I think that story really allows everybody to identify with.
Undoubtedly, your scientific team is incredibly strong because your product is the best in Europe. So how did you hire the scientist without being able to evaluate their abilities potentially?
I think the first few hires that we did, and basically the senior scientific team that was with us from the very beginning, you know them all, they were very, very good in what they do, or they are very, very good in what they do scientifically. And for the first few hires, technically I was only able to evaluate, are these the people I want to work with, and do they have the cultural fit and the ambition and also kind of, the hands-on mentality execution that we need early stage. But I had some advisors who basically helped me to also figure out, are these people really good in what they do? And from the first hires, then they can evaluate within their teams if the people they want to bring on are skilled. So I think it really comes down to, are the first few hires, specifically technical hires, really, really good? And then there's somewhat a process of self-selection in their teams because they only want to work with really good people.
Imagine now there would be a business graduate coming to you and asking, hey, Rafa, I want to start a bio company in the deep tech space. How should I start?
I think the approach to say, I just want to start something, I think doesn't work. I think that's a misconception that many people still have also in venture building, and that you could basically just say, okay, here's a great opportunity and biology is up and coming, and I'm going to find some people who basically just built something here. I think that doesn't work, specifically because the journey is long and it's hard and it gets lonely and it's challenging. And if you don't really have that passion for that specific problem you're addressing or the technology or the field, then it's not going to work, I think. So what I would tell people, like business graduates who say, I want to find something in the bio field, I would tell them, what specifically are you interested in? And then figure out, like, you know, what specific niche of the market or industry you want to go for. I mean, bio is a really wide field. Specifically these days, you could say, I work on food, I work on materials, I work on, you know, life science and pharma, I work on enabling technology, scaling, whatever. There's so many things you could do. But first, I would say, like, what is the specific need that you want to address? So start with the why you want to do it, and then figuring out how to do it then is I think, easier.
Yes, and we also see that we now have the underpinning technologies that might unravel the entire involvement of the bioindustry today. So what specific areas would you like to look at now, imagining you would start out again? What are innovations, what are developments in the field that you find interesting?
Many of the things that are already being started now, so of course in biomanufacturing, whether it's foods or materials, something that is really interesting is solving the capacity bottleneck, so working on getting more biomanufacturing volume or fermentation volume. The next thing is, and this is obviously up and coming because it's just a hot topic right now, is computational biology or bioinformatics, so really making use of big data for bio. I think we're still some years away that really kicks in, but I think it's a really interesting thing to start now. One thing I'm specifically interested in, and there are some companies addressing that right now, is getting away from legacy production systems and finding new ways to produce materials or food. For those who are not familiar, you basically, if you produce things through biomanufacturing or fermentation, then you have I would say, like 5 to 15 potential organisms that everybody's working with that basically have a proven track record to manufacture things at scale, and many people or many companies basically just gravitate around those. But there's thousands and millions of other organisms out there who could be much more potent to produce the things we want, and figuring out which ones we basically should now start to engineer to then basically in a few years really reap the benefits. I think that was something really interesting.
Indeed. So before we might open up for 1 or 2 questions, let's give people the opportunity to maybe work backwards from a futuristic view that you have. So how do you see the bioindustry to evolve in the next 15 years? 15.
15. I think we will see a bioeconomy that is pretty much replacing the petrochemical industry in terms of producing materials. I think a majority of the food that we will be consuming in 15 years will be biomanufactured. And we will have pretty much the ability to produce any compounds of value, also added value, manufacturing aids, coloring agents, etc., through biology. And we will have outside of big cities and mega cities, we will have big centralized biomanufacturing hubs, but we will also see more of a dispersion. So like you see today, microbreweries, for example, you will see microbreweries or fermentation plants also in the future producing some of these compounds very locally and in a very fragmented, dispersed, local way.
Sounds like a compelling vision. And maybe last words to the audience. Maybe there is someone who might want to start a company. What are your words to them?
I would say first one is trust your gut feeling. I think that for me was really one of the things that I've learned now over the years, is that gut feeling is mostly right. Build a strong network of people around you. I think that is probably something that every entrepreneur would tell you, is that you need a very good support system, your family, your friends, other founders, like just people who basically understand the journey that you're on, that you're not feeling lonely, that you really can exchange thoughts and be supported. And then the third thing I think is really, have fun, don't act out of fear. This is a great life and there's so many things we can do. Everything is just socially constructed, and we have any given day the possibility to create whatever we want by telling great stories and bringing great people together to make things happen that we believe in.
Wonderful. Is there a question to Rafa from the audience before we close up?
Much, both of you. And by the
Thanks.
way, quick shout out to Jonas and Ron also for helping us curate the bio kind of verticals in BioVertical, which we truly are fascinated by at Team TOA. We have a few questions and very little time, so let's start maybe with the first very obvious one. Do your products offer the same nutritional value as non-dairy ones? As dairy ones, I guess.
Which one, sorry?
The first one, right?
The first one.
Yeah.
How to validate...
all the way up on top. Do your products offer the same nutritional value
Yes,
as
they do.
dairy ones?
Yes,
yeah?
they do.
I mean, they are on an atomic level almost the same.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. But what do you think of food like the meat, for example, out of the lab? Yeah. Same on the atomic kind of level, but taste-wise, apparently still different? Have you gotten around
meat products or our products?
Meat or also your product?
I think there might still be a difference. I mean, what I can see in our products as well is that some of the dairy products are very, very specially and locally produced. If you think about a cheese that is producing the French Alps with like the cows only grazing a certain type of herbs that kind of ends up in the milk and that gives the cheese a very specific flavor, that is hard to replicate, and I also don't think that will be made redundant anytime soon, but we're more talking about the animal mass factory farming produced standardized product that lands everywhere and on the shelves, right? So there is definitely a difference, and also, and this is what we see all the time, is that if you look at, for example, our white mold cheese, what do you compare it to? Even within the white mold cheese universe, there is like so many different flavor profiles that you could give people 10 different bries and they would say, yeah, it's all brie, they taste different, but they're all brie. And I think the same thing applies also to the Select produced products, which is always what you compare it with.
Is there a resource for our audience if they wanted to find out a little bit more, sort of an introductory resource, a blog, a certain person on Twitter that does a good job at curating the space?
I mean, if you really want to go deep, I think still the Rethink X report that came out a couple of years ago is really good on cellular agriculture, and then you could also go to New Harvest. The Good Food Institute offers a lot of resources, or also our website. We also have a lot of resources online.
Thank you so much to both of you for shining a light on this emerging space. Thank you.
Thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the next video.